This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
This is Faith Under Fire from Family Life News. We talk about how the cultural swings are happening back toward more justice and righteousness. 2 weeks ago, we visited with Matthew Faraci of the organization Gideon 300. Our focus then was on politics, but we zoom out more to the culture at large.
As you look at where things are as this new chapter in America dawns, let's focus in on the cultural and the faith and values issues. What is new and different as 2025 opens up?
Well, I had the privilege to co-author a piece actually about this in the Daily Caller right after the election with my colleague Chris McIntyre, my partner in crime at Gideon 300. And we talked about, Greg, this concept which has really taken root called the American Renaissance. And it's the idea that this election was not just an election. It wasn't just switching one party to another. This election was about two fundamental visions. One was a vision of a dystopian America that most of us didn't recognize. Well, what is this? What are we looking at? It was hard to understand. And then the other is a vision of the America that we know that's great, the America that we grew up with, the America that has strong family values, the America that believes in faith and in tolerance for people that may not share the same faith that we do, but everybody was on board in the country we grew up in, Greg, with common sense, right? You just do what's right. You follow the golden rule, all those kind of things. And we believe that the election was the people speaking up and saying, that's the vision we want to go back to. That's the vision we want to restore. Just like the wonderful visual that you got from the story of Josiah, if you remember, when Josiah becomes king and he pulls out the Torah and he reads it and he weeps and he says, hey, we've gotten away from the programming that God put us on. That's the path. America now has the opportunity to head down that path. I never thought I was going to see that in my lifetime, Greg. I don't know if you did, but I felt like I was praying for our country every day, but I didn't think that I would see this. I thought we were just going to be in kind of a constant decline, and how bad was it going to get and what were we going to have to do? But now I think people need to realize that all of this has happened, but voting was just the beginning. And the question is, what has God called you to do every single day? Turn the Netflix off. Stop having to do all these recreational activities. You may have to give up a vacation. That's fine, because we have this rare opportunity now to take our country back. What does that look like for you? What does that look like for your skill set? Is that serving on a school board? Is that running for office? Is that, what is it that God would have you to do to help take advantage of this moment and put our country back where it needs to be?
Matthew, I appreciate you raising that it's not just about voting and, for that matter, not just about politics. Obviously, the actions of government shape some of the debates. We've seen that with Title IX and gender and transgender. People with traditional values not only felt silenced, but in many cases, you look back not too many years, they were not allowed to talk about things on Facebook and what was then called Twitter. Has this faith and values community always been there, but just felt sidelined, or is this drawing new people into that kind of a movement?
Well, first, Greg, I think you very astutely mentioned the fact that this was a referendum on a bunch of those issues. For example, just look at corporate America, right? Corporate America, unfortunately, doesn't really have any values. They go where they think the culture's going and where they can make the most money. 6 months ago, they were all about the transgender agenda and promoting the transgender agenda, and they were for it. Now, they've seen the pivot, and you can see that it's very clear everybody in America got the message. This has gone too far. The adults in this country don't like this. We don't accept it. And we want to see this repudiated. So you're watching corporate America now go back into a more traditional direction. So to your point, beyond just voting, again, there's a cultural shift where this was a referendum on people's values and what they think those values look like.
The various generations here. I know there was a lot made about how younger people and people of different ethnic backgrounds shifted toward a more conservative side, certainly Republican, but also are standing up for some of the religious and faith and values issues. Are you seeing that among the younger Americans now?
Yes. Greg, the first thing I want to say is I was recently at Turning Point USA, which is Charlie Kirk's fantastic organization. And I was speaking to a reporter who was covering the event. And he pulled me aside and he said, Matt, you know what's crazy to me? He said, the left in this country controls a lot of areas. They control the universities. They control the government. He went through all of these things. And he said, but the thing that surprises me the most is that conservatives are winning the culture. I have to tell you, that was a stunning statement for me. I come from the Andrew Breitbart school of thought, having been involved in the entertainment space. Andrew taught me that politics is downstream from culture. And what's interesting, Greg, is if you think about what was happening over the last couple of years before this election, we were actually seeing a shift in the culture. Think about The Chosen, the most watched TV show in the world at this point, I think. Think about Sound of Freedom, the amazing box office blockbuster success that was Sound of Freedom, beating out Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones and big studio films. Homestead, another big hit. The Reagan movie, another big hit. So you could see that the culture was shifting. That was stunning to me because the thing that I felt like we were losing was the culture. The very thing that I always felt like we were losing, it's clear that we're actually taking the culture back. You saw that demonstrated at the ballot box. For instance, a surge in younger voters voting for President Trump. Who saw that? Who saw that coming? And then an electorate that's more diverse than we've ever seen on the Republican side. All the different demographics. Trump did better with women. They said, oh, no, that wasn't going to work out because of abortion. Didn't have the impact they said it was going to have. So there's a coalition of people, and I just called them, Greg, the grown-ups, the adults. If you look at a lot of people that joined the movement, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, Elon Musk, these are people that are not traditional Republicans. But what they are is they're just common sense grown-ups who said, nope, I look at what the Judeo-Christian values are of this country, and I understand we're not heading in that direction. And so I'm going to join forces with a political party I might not have done in the past, but I see how far off the road the other guys have gone, that this is going to be my new home. And I think that we've got in this American Renaissance, Greg, we've got this coalition of grownups who are now back. Remember we were told when Biden came back that the adults are back in charge. And obviously, generally what they tell you is the opposite of what is actually true. Now we see it. The adults are back in charge, but we're not just talking about the government. We're talking about the people.
Let me ask you to give us a couple quick bullet points, some action steps for listeners who want to see the movement continue, not necessarily toward a Republican side, but more toward a biblical side, and what's good for the best of the social culture. What are the steps that people need to take to continue that momentum?
Greg, people of faith should now be reminded and fully understand that their involvement can result in change, the kind of change that's needed, the change, as you alluded to, in a more biblical direction. It's not a Republican change. It's not a Democrat change. It's a change for the sake of righteousness. And so the other lesson that people of faith need to see is that they need to, A, make their voices heard, and B, take action. There's a wonderful, I'm going to grossly paraphrase this, but one of the founding fathers of America, and I believe it was James Madison, I'll have to go back and look, had this wonderful quote where he said, "I'm glad that you're praying, but I pray that you will act." In other words, both pray and go do something. And so my encouragement to your listeners is whatever it is that God's given them a passion for, whatever that thing is that to help their fellow citizen, that they feel inspired to do, get up and do it. Take the time, take your leisure activities away, focus your time on making a difference. There was a poll that was done by Summit Ministries about 2 years ago, still relevant. And the poll was asking people with a more biblical worldview and then people with a more secular worldview, how do you spend, if you're politically active and culturally active, how do you spend your time? And the people with the biblical worldview said, we vote. That's it. We vote. That's what we do. And the people on the other side said, every day, every week, we're working to change the society around us. So imagine if you could flip that and the people with the biblical worldview could say, every day I'm working to change the society around me. And so every single person that's listening, God has given them a specific talent and a specific ability. And it's time to start asking, God, what do you want me to do specifically? Action items. What do you want me to do with that? There are so many organizations, whether you're interested in making the country healthy again, or working on education, or working on behalf of Israel, whatever it is that your passion is, the life issue. There's so many organizations that need support to support our elected leaders in Washington as they're trying, and in the state capitals, as they're trying to achieve this kind of lasting change. And so there's such a great need for people to get up and help, and the time is now.
Matthew Faraci is the founder of Gideon 300. How can people find out more about that work and the advocacy that you do?
Yeah, just find me on X. I'm still getting used to calling it X, Greg, and not Twitter, but just find me on X. It's at Matthew Faraci. That's Matthew, like you know how it's spelled, and then Faraci, Faraci. Find me on Twitter. Let me know you're there, and let's continue the conversation.
We will provide that information on the Family Life News podcast page. We'll also provide a link to some of his work as an executive involved in the Angel Studios productions of The Sound of Freedom and Chosen. Matthew Faraci of Gideon 300 has been our guest today on Faith Under Fire, where we listen to the voices from the religious battlefields in our culture. I'm Greg Gillespie, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.